Hot off the presses, it is election night.
Dum, dum, dum.
We are here for the what is it? The election of the century?
The election of the millennium.
Okay, so I don't want to make this any more weirder than it already is. I am here back in Louisville with my brother and my brother from another. Fun fact about Justin Metcalf, the guy to my left, in my phone in high school, brother 2 was just how he always was listed. We had a very, very close relationship. He is a Marine. Thank you for your service, sir. And when I got back to Louisville, he said, we need to have a politics conversation. We need to have a conversation about politics.
Yeah.
I said, all right, let's rock. This is the Podigal Sons podcast. This might as well be episode 1 with me and your boy Lance. Yeah, I'm actually doing too much talking. Might as well open up. Lance, what's good?
Man, I feel like the air is just crispy. It's like primed for some real historical shit. Like you have y'all been getting the feeling that we're living inside of history right now?
Technically, we always are, but yes.
Yeah,
this moment
normal though, right? Like if Anne Frank, if she was staying in the basement under Anne Frank, and she was just a little girl, like staying in the attic, and you was just you didn't know, but you was in history. You could have been keeping a diary about the noise you keep hearing in the attic, and you would have been a historian.
That's a rough comparison. I think it's hard for me to go. I was with you because I'm actually living in this time, but when you went to Anne Frank and the person like hearing it and as if it was like a raccoon.
Yeah, I'm confused. yeah, I don't know.
You obviously. We're obviously living in history at this point in time, and Justin, like, I guess it feels weird to say because like we always have, but Justin, what would you say to the concept of the history that we're in right now in America?
I think if you're talking about what's going on in 2020, the election, COVID is definitely unprecedented.
That's the word that everybody uses.
Yes. So, I mean, yeah, that's a fact. If you're talking about living in history, if this is significant, absolutely.
Yeah, with the
pandemic, yeah, going on during an election.
It's threefold, right? If we're talking about historical events that we remember, right? We remember plagues, right? or famines, just social things. We remember social unrest or social and elections, and then we remember, because it's threefold, y'all. We remember natural disasters, and I feel like there's a bunch of natural disasters that will like mark the 2020, not just hurricanes and stuff.
To take this a little bit left, but also on the same train, Sean Connery died last weekend at the age of 90, and I feel like because Kobe happened at the beginning of this year, like all of the celebrity deaths, as crazy, and there's been some crazy celebrity deaths, some like historic celebrity deaths within 2020, and there's a meme, like, oh, there go 2020 again, and everyone's memeing the hell out of 2020, but like Sean Connery is an example of like, I thought it would be it would have been a bigger deal if 2020 wasn't what it is.
Are you comparing Sean Connery in his career to Kobe Bryant in his career?
Saying that if I'm comparing the impact of their demise. Obviously, Kobe and Gigi was much more tragic in how it happened, and he's traveling, but it was a big hit. I was coming home. This is how how regular 2020 was until March. I was coming back from the theater watching Parasite that ended up winning the Best Picture when I was on the couch and saw my phone and about the Kobe news happen. So like that felt like a change for everything, and it actually did, because like movie theater shut down after that.
Justin, where was you at? Where was you at when you learned Kobe died?
I was at home. I saw it on Facebook. My brother posted about it. He was like, "No, not Kobe," and I was like, I just had a sunken feeling in my gut. I'm like, what does this mean? Like, what is he talking about? So I turn on the news and it's like a helicopter crash scene. I knew it was bad.
Bro, how ironic. I was in the YMCA's gym and people were playing basketball and one person was like, Kobe's dead. Kobe's dead. Everybody was like, what? What? I've never seen the game stop. Everybody stopped playing and went to their phones. And everybody was like, and the reaction, it was like, could you imagine a basketball gym full of reactions? Literally, this ain't no metaphor. This is a literal, like, personification of grief.
Wow.
It was the wildest thing.
I mean,
That one is I really don't like get celebrity deaths. They don't really bother me too much, but the Kobe one, it just felt different.
Justin don't give a fuck about no celebrity. You a regular person, you gonna die and rot like the rest of us.
I mean, not to put it that bluntly, but essentially, yes. I mean, but no, the Kobe news, it just felt different. I don't know if it was because his daughter was with him or because of the way it happened. It was so tragic and sudden. I don't know, just everything about it was different.
yeah, I mean, and it got the ball rolling on one fucking hell of a year, if that's fair to say. And because of that, and obviously 2020 was going to be a big year anyways, because the election that we're in right now.
And this is like our friendship predates any kind of political leanings or thoughts.
It really does. No, I will say, Justin, yours didn't lean any type of way. Mine had already been far leaning to the left because I was already on Most Def. Yeah, bro. In middle school, I was like writing Black Power poems and like.
Yeah, your favorite band was, or your favorite CD was Black Star.
Black Star. This was my favorite. Like I had already been getting like 2000. Bro, I remember the damn the genocide in Rwanda. Like hold on, that was in high school though. Anyway, it don't matter. Like early in middle school, I was kind of conscious and leaning to the left. You were the person that was still learning, and I feel like you didn't start leaning right till you went to the military.
No, I mean, I guess you could say that.
But I think that's a little bit unfair, just because like if you have an opinion and your friends and you think your friends don't, you just assume that they have your opinion. That's been my whole thing about this whole. That's been this whole thing about this whole vote thing, because everyone's like, "Oh, go vote," but all I hear is like, "Vote for the person I want to vote for," or like I was like, "What if you're urging me to the polls to go against your wishes?" So I think that we can't say necessarily where Justin was leaning, just because, but you would think that just because we were experiencing the same thing on the day to day, they're like, "Oh, we have our same opinion about politics."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got a point. I mean, but people's viewpoints change over time. I mean, you don't think the same thing that you thought when you were 16 that you think as at 30.
Absolutely not. Oh, we was wilding back here in Kentucky when I was at 16. Age 16 was wild.
Politically, I would say that you haven't changed, because that's where our political stance comes from, our morality stance, right? Like our belief or our feelings of morality often shape how we will view a political, or like shape our political stance. So the things that you agree with and the policies you agree with, I guarantee you felt the same way when you were 16. That's why you have kind of come to that.
I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't really thought about it that deeply. Like before I became aware of any kind of policy, what my opinion may have been back then, I don't know, because it just wasn't at the front of my brain at that point. So I can't really say yay or nay.
I can tell you it was at the front of my brain, and it has been cemented over the years. Like it hasn't even, the literature I've read, the things that I'm interested in, cemented is the key word. Yeah, no, I mean, because it's a foundation. Cement belongs on foundation. If you're going to have a political foundation, you know what I mean? Like, you have to reinforce the things that you had initially believed in when you were at your most virtuous, you know what I mean?
So what is it that it's at top of the mind for you, Justin, that would make you say, yeah, I'm leaning, like I'm on the right side of the fence right now?
Right now, you're talking about how we got to this point.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like what is it that so clearly makes you and Lance different in the when it comes to politics? Like what are your thinking? Like
I know what it is, but I want to see if you say it.
Well, like, yeah, I guess like what is like obviously all these things. There's like X amount of hot button issues that everything else trickles down between. You know, and like a lot of Republicans just are very pro life, or you can say Catholics are pro life, and anything and whoever is going to be for the pro life, it's very easy. It's very binary how they think. So, what are your binary things that make you say that you're on the right side of the fence?
I mean, I think everybody's political viewpoints are shaped by their own personal worldview. I mean, based on your experiences, your familiarity with the issues. I mean, that all that plays into it. If you're asking me for like one single thing that separates me from Lance, I don't know.
No, I mean like just I guess, yeah. Why do you think I guess the deep dive with like Lance. No, we don't need you. We don't. The deep dive goes into this period. I guess here's the thing for me. Like, I can't have Trump in office because I feel like when he is in office, I am more afraid for my life on a day-to-day basis. So like you talking about coming down to survival shit like that. Like I just feel like there's a heightened sense of divisiveness, and because of how I was born, I am a political entity in this country, and because of that, one side of the political fence is more welcoming to the political entity that is my birthright. So like that's one of the things I feel like when it comes to the Venn diagram of Republicans and Democrats, the thing that they don't see eye to eye on, thing that's not in the middle of that eye, is police reform in some way, shape, or form, or even the act of it. So that's why I'm on that side. So like that's just an example of like a binary thing where it's easy for me to say where I am, regardless, because I obviously have a lot of backward ass things. Like I'm glad there's some buffer time between, because like I sound like Uncle Ruckus sometimes, but for that issue alone, yeah, I'm definitely on the left.
What issue? You talking about police reform?
Just for like what is that blanketed enough?
No, I'm gonna tell you the key difference between me and Justin, and also the key difference between many.
I think that's fair for you to say, because you said your piece, and we know like if you say what your key piece is, that's setting him again. That's saying the crazy conservative thing. So like, I think we should lay out for Justin, because like let him frame it, because he's going to tell his story. He's not going to compare it to you.
Right.
Now he's not, because I just directed him that way.
No, well, I don't know. I just think your question needs to be asked in a different way. Like
you frame the question and answer it.
And I wasn't going to set him up like a crazy conservative. It's literally the ideology of a conservative that I believe. Yes, according to me, but it's that basis for being an American and what we're going to agree on and what we're not going to agree on. And it goes back to the Civil War. It goes back to the very beginning of America's inception in 1916, when the first 20 got off of the ship as slaves, right? Like, are we a slave-holding nation or are we not a slave-holding nation? It's like, and if we are not a slave-holding nation, but we once were, then we have to work towards reparations and acknowledging racism at being the main cause of our social ills. Justin does not think that racism is the main cause of our social ills. Well, I'm paraphrasing. I may be wrong.
See, there you go.
Well, no, I may be wrong, but this is what.
Bro.
Now's a good time to lay out,
bro. Like, I don't even know where to begin with that. First of all, I think you meant 1619, not 1916.
Definitely did.
But I don't even know where to begin. Like, so if you're talking about like what makes someone lean more liberal or lean left or lean Democrat versus lean Republican, conservative, I don't see how you take it all the way back to
It's how much racism they believe in.
no, bro.
Yes.
That's silly. And see, that's no, that's you. Like that's what Brandon meant when he says extreme, because you frame everything up in terms of race, where I do not. If that's the distinction you're trying to make, then definitely.
Yeah, that's the distinction I was making. That's just the distinction.
There's more to politics and the way you view the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. There's more to it than just race alone. That seems to be very important. Like that's what you mainly focus on. And what I'm saying, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I know. I brought it up to say that is where we disconnect. Like, out of all the little conversations we've had, out of all the, intellectual, just deep dive thought processes that we've gone through, we've always come down to that, where I am tracing everything back to racism, and you are saying that it's not racism.
I'm not saying that
or not that it's not racism. You're just saying you can't prove implicit bias. That's your thing. Like,
no,
you can't.
I'm telling you that politically, there's more to it than just race and racial issues. Like, if you're talking about politics as a whole, race only plays. I mean, it's a piece of the pie. It's not the pie, but I think for you, it is the pie.
But otherwise, there's no reason to have politics. Like, what is politics? Where if you had to define politics in your words, what would the definition of politics be?
I think he gave a pretty decent one just now, but yeah, if you think you can elaborate on that.
What was the pretty decent one?
I mean, making the distinction of how politics is more than just race.
That doesn't define politics. It doesn't define politics. Like, when we're talking about
saying, like, what
politics.
Are you asking though?
I'm asking you, tell me the definition of politics. I am an alien, just traveled to your world, and I'm asking you, what is politics?
I mean, politics. I mean,
I'll give you the one that Google just gave me via Wikipedia. The activities associated with the governance of a country and other areas, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power.
In other words, the act of making and creating policy. Yeah.
No, both of those.
Just a short and sweet.
Now that you have defined politics, I argue that the motivation to seek power or to create policy is based purely on the social dynamic that race, the construct of race, comes into, that has brought into, right? Is we if we believe in race, then we believe that one needs to be better than the other. Then we make policy and we build our politics around the sustainability of said construct. Do you feel what I'm saying? Like, that's where our disconnect comes from.
You said believe in race. I think you need to clear that up, because what do you mean believe in race?
If you believe that there are racial hierarchies within humanity, like, if you believe that there is a hierarchy amongst the races or amongst the different colors of people, if you believe in that, which is a fallacy, which is a social construct, right? There's nothing scientific that proves this. There's nothing, there's pseudoscience that, they did in the 1920s with eugenics and everything else, but that has been proven false. Like, if you believe in these things, in that fallacy of social construct, then your politics will be driven or inspired by, sustaining what you believe to be the order of humanity.
I think it's very problematic. You start talking about the hierarchy of race, and if you believe or if you don't believe in that, I mean, like, what does that even mean? That's very confusing.
How is that confusing? What are you confused about?
The hierarchy of, like, what do you...
He's saying that if as long as white people believe that they are better than all people because they are
But
white.
that's a blanket statement. How can you just state that as a matter of fact? Like that's not.
Are you serious, Justin? Like, the proof is in the pudding, then the action. Actions speak louder than words. There is hundreds of years of imperialism by Europe, by these European countries.
Wait a minute. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about racism, or like this?
We're talking about how you believe that racism is a portion of the pie.
No. First of all, I haven't said what I believe. I don't want to tell. I mean, I think like the conversation started about politics and how people come to their viewpoints, and then somehow it took a left turn onto race and racial theory. I don't know how we got there. I'm confused.
I mean, Lance was on the beat.
We got there because I asked you to define politics, and then I was trying to get you to make the correlation between the motivation of politics. If politics are making policy, what motivates us to make that policy, right? If people are not being killed by drunk drivers, there is no policy being made to curb drunk driving. And there's a cause and effect to everything. So I'm just trying to get to you that somebody's politics is not this emptyless, emotionless vacuum that just is just an android. It is a feeling thing that is swayed by human error, that is swayed by human emotion, that is swayed by human motivations, and there's nothing that's just purely political about humanity, right, or about life in general.
Okay. So my question is, are you saying that...
Please stop asking Lance questions. Have him respond to something that you that you talk about. I guess because shit. If you want to do this, we can just go ahead to the rundown. Trump versus Biden. Those are the candidates. That's what we have here. Who'd you vote for and why?
Oh my God! Hey y'all. So I have not. I have not asked Justin who he voted for. I have not we haven't talked since the whole early voting thing. We've had conversations. I haven't tried to make him vote for or try to convince him to vote for anything. I just been trying to get little inklings of where he's feeling based on what he's seen in the past 4 years and what he thinks the next 4 years are going to be, and just kind of testing the water. But I do not know who he voted for, and this is going to I'm ready for this. This is some
You've done more than stage points.
Right. So what's your point? What's your point?
Who'd you vote for?
Who did you vote for?
Kanye. Psych.
That would have been hilarious.
You know better. Stop that. Go ahead though. Who'd you vote for? You know who I voted for.
You voted for Trump?
That's who you know I voted for. That's who you think I voted for.
Potentially.
Stop, Justin. With you knowing me, being an honest person, you think that I voted for Trump. Stop being goofy. Potentially based on what, Justin?
I don't know.
Shut the fuck up. You just being goofy right now. Be serious.
Dogmatic racial theories. I don't know.
Stop being goofy, Justin. Stop being goofy. You know who I voted for. Who did you vote for?
I voted for Trump. And you're looking for an explanation? Is that what you want?
What led you to vote for Trump?
Because I have absolutely zero confidence that Joe Biden is the answer to our problems. Like what makes you think that Joe Biden has the answers to anything that we see going on in 2020?
I would argue because it feels as if Trump is the cause of a lot of those problems.
In what ways? You talking about the pandemic? You talking about the economy? Like specifically? Like what do you mean?
I think the unification of the term Americans, whoever falls under that spectrum, is now being questioned and challenged uh, internally. It's a civil war of sorts when it comes to what it looks like to be an American, and I think
I
that's
don't think that.
because Trump has set a tone for what Americans do, think, say, feel. Uh, but yeah, that's just on me. That's why that's yeah. Answer my question or your question.
I disagree. I mean, I think citizenship is pretty clear, whether you're an American or not.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, what does that even mean? Like what's American and what does that mean?
I guess I've just been from whatever rhetoric that I've pushed from hitting play on this thing. I have been dragged through the mud by a fan base who probably did vote for Trump more so than they voted for Biden and Kamala Harris, and all they did was challenge the fact of or challenge me being an American because of
Because your opinions.
I'll say this every time I've opened my mouth about any troubles that I think that the country may or may not be in. I've gotten a lot of go back to where you come from or why don't you leave. So that makes me feel like that they are them specifically whoever them is the people who are voting for Trump or the people who are Republicans. I don't know who falls in the spectrum, but feel like that they can denounce my citizenship because I have an issue with what's going on in the country.
That's lunacy. If that's what you're experiencing, I would say that's crazy. I mean, I think the people on the internet are not the majority of Americans, and the majority of Americans don't feel like that. I mean, I mean, if you have a different opinion, does that mean you're not an American? No, that's goofy. Like what sane person would come to that conclusion? Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
I cannot fucking believe you voted for Trump.
Why not? Like what's shocking about
How dare you say you're basing your choice on the ability to handle the things that Biden is not the answer to our problems, yet you think the person that I'm not going to say caused, but definitely didn't do nothing to stop, halt, or slow the problems from spiraling into a societal chaos. Like,
So you got to get specific. Like what
I'm going to get
about?
specific. I'm getting there because it doesn't even matter. I can fucking throw a cup in the air and it's going to land on a problem that Trump has slept on or has not done enough for. So let's talk about the economy. When Obama left after having a whole mortgage crisis and everything within his term, after having all of that, turning the economy back around, it gets put in this man's hands for 4 years, and you have not seen it uptick. You have not seen jobs come back. You have not seen any of the things that he promised, any of the things that you thought was going to happen, yet you think
That's
giving
false.
him another. That's false? What's false about it?
You're saying you didn't, so the economy wasn't growing under Donald Trump before the pandemic hit? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it was growing as Obama left it to grow, and then it came under the hands of Donald Trump, and it is dying.
So when you measure economic growth, like what are you basing that on? What is your measurement?
You tell me the measurement, Justin. The measurement that, because please, I would love to know the measurement that is like giving you the Trump okay. Like what measurement are you looking at that's making you say, you know what, he handled that pretty good?
So typically when you're looking at the economy, people look at the gross domestic product, and that sort of measures the overall health of the economy. Go ahead and look it up.
No, go.
So
He's doing stuff. Go.
okay. So yes, Barack Obama deserves credit for stabilizing and turning the economy around, but he had the slowest GDP growth of any president since World War II. Where when Donald,
What is the GDP
it's gross
growth?
domestic product. It's what we produce as a nation overall.
For who? For who?
It's it's what we produce. It's you're looking at the stock market, cost of living, inflation rates. All of those things are factored in to this measurement to look at the overall health of the economy. So when you look at the
rate has gone down since Donald Trump has been in. Like what growth things are starting to be made more in America since Donald Trump has been in. Like what this GDP that you're talking about that was slow during Obama, you're telling me that it has grown under Trump?
yes, initially,
Is it fair to say that Obama walked into a recession at that point in time?
absolutely, he did.
He had a pretty big mess to clean up while Trump was dealing with an America that, to what you're saying, was growing at that point in time.
Okay, so for the sake of time and productivity, I think it'd be good to just because I felt like we started off and we sort of got into debate mode, and that's not what we were intended to do to begin with.
I think Lance wanted to come here and debate you.
I think so too. And we could do that on another day with parameters set and specific questions asked. I think we could do that, but I think just the general idea was just to have a discussion in general with the election being tomorrow and sort of our take on it individually, like what we see, where we see it going, maybe what we see happening after the election. That's sort of more what I was prepared to talk about, not necessarily debate. We could do that, but like I said, at a later time, I think when we actually set parameters for actually what we're talking about.
On the rundown that you created, Trump versus Biden, was that, I think the first half of that could be construed as that.
Yeah.
The next thing you have on the list is Kamala Harris, the black vote, and the numbers game. When I saw the numbers game, especially in quotes, I was interested in exactly what that was about. Obviously, I didn't know what the GD whatever was, so I'm not a very politically sound mind, and I was here to learn from both of you guys as people who are deep in the hashtag weeds. So, tell me what that is.
So when you're talking about the numbers game, what I was referring to was how certain segments of the electorate is calculated into the way the parties campaign and how they go after votes. Like specifically speaking, like the black vote, the black electorate votes Democrat about 90% of the time, as opposed to Republican Party about 9%. So that determines how they campaign and where they spend their time campaigning, and how that relates to Kamala Harris. I mean, I think she's put on a ticket for a very specific reason. I think it's to recapture that Obama coalition, because in 2016, I think it was about 7% of the black electorate stayed home and didn't come out to support Clinton, and that's part of the reason she lost. So I think that's the major reason that Kamala Harris is on the ticket, is to bring those people back into the fold and recapture that Obama coalition.
That makes sense to me. I mean, as I thought Kamala backed out of the race way too soon when it was her chance, and I feel like, I didn't think it was like another shoe was going to come out. I didn't think this was the thing. I was very, very surprised when Joe Biden won South Carolina, and predominantly the black woman vote. I was surprised by that. I kind of was as someone with student loans, I was even farther left from the socialist like Bernie train. So, and also I didn't like the way that Joe Biden took his time deciding to run. Like all those things were negatives for me at that point in time. So I do obviously these tickets are collected and put on a specific way to best suit the president of this whole thing, but I appreciated the move because it felt like one. I don't know. I think because it plays to the social media, putting Kamala on the ticket. I think it plays to the social media nature of what politics is now, and the amount of people that are on Twitter, especially after Trump was elected. Twitter was going down, like one of the least populated websites for a very long time. Instagram and obviously Facebook, who owns Instagram, was killing everyone. Then in 2016, when Trump got in office and Trump was on Twitter and the president was on Twitter, you saw so many people downloading Twitter for the first time. So I felt like Kamala Harris was a Twitter ticket for Joe Biden. And just the same was like when John McCain was running, Sarah Palin was the oh look, we got something crazy and different too, when everybody was like about to put Barack in office. So yes, obviously these tickets are created in a specific way. I think our father, my dad, he wanted Stacey Abrams to be Joe Biden's running mate. Because if you look at Kamala's policy, it's not very left leaning. She's a yeah, so that's what, yeah. So I'm just agreeing with you in so many words that obviously the ticket was constructed to get the black vote, quite honestly. And also, we haven't talked about the Divine Nine, the sororities and fraternities, black sororities and fraternities, and Kamala being a AKA, like that's a lot of Soros were like, okay, I don't care what's going on, I'm voting, even if it was for the first time. We're putting it's a big time for that whole, like you can talk about the Q dogs and like that whole establishment, that part of America feels very seen at this point in time with Kamala on the ticket. So
Right. I think when you look at the numbers, when you break it down further, like demographics between men and women, and then along racial lines, like you start to see, like I say, the numbers game, like how that factors in. So the Democratic Party, I think the black vote makes up about 24% of their total, of the people who vote Democrat. The black vote specifically is about 24% of the Democratic Party. So bringing back that Obama coalition, that's huge for them. And Donald Trump, contrary to belief, he started making some inroads with minority voters, and I think they picked up on that. And if he's able to splinter that 90% stranglehold on the black vote in any way, that could be curtains for the Democratic Party in a presidential election.
do you think yes?
I don't know. I think it remains to be seen. I think we're going to find out tomorrow. But I think he definitely did better than Mitt Romney did in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, Mitt was, yeah. Okay, this is actually perfect for segueing and time. We probably, like I said, we didn't want to record for very much long. It's 2 a.m., so this is election day. Shout out to, election day. Everyone out there voting. This is when this is going to go up. What are people's predictions, Lance? Let's start with you.
I predict that Biden will win by a healthy margin, but it won't be healthy enough for Trump to concede. So he will, like, if it is not a landslide, he will challenge that, and when he challenges that, we will see a power struggle that we haven't seen in this country ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a possibility. I think people are definitely concerned about that. First of all, these things are so hard to predict, especially this election with how close it is. I don't think anybody can make a real prediction. But if I had to give mine, I would say Trump wins very narrowly, like razor thin. I'm talking about like maybe lose the popular vote again and narrowly win in the electoral college. It could go that way. It could go Biden in a landslide. We don't know. It could go Trump in a landslide. Like, I think this one is just too close to call. And and if you look at the polling, like, yes, Biden is up in all the polls nationally, but some of these swing states, it's within the margin of error. So I think it's really just, it's too close to call. What I would hope would happen would be whoever wins, I'd hope it would be a clear majority, so where there's no disputes whatsoever, so it doesn't go to court, and so there isn't this conflict and these protests and people upset and people that don't want to accept the results of the election. I hope it's clear-cut winner and we find out tomorrow night and it's over with, but that's probably not going to happen, especially with mail-in voting.
I mean, I saw earlier they said up to 100 million Americans have already voted up until this point before election day happens. I don't want to get to. I don't think Trump's going to win this election. I don't think he has the ability to, just based on the fact of like his track record. I think when he won, there was no track record. There was just all rhetoric and build the wall and all these types of things that people got excited about. Now we have evidence of what he's done in office, and not saying it's bad or good, but the man was impeached. Right. And one of the very few number of presidents in American history who were impeached legally, but obviously through legalities of politics and things like that, he never had to leave office and be replaced.
So I got a question, and this is part of the reason I think Trump is going to win. I think first of all, I think this entire election is a referendum on Donald Trump and his personality. I see the hate, I see the discontent with Trump, but I don't see the enthusiasm for Biden.
Yeah. Okay. I would agree with that. But there is something that I wanted to bring up that I thought was quite crazy. Do you remember Michael Smith from
ESPN?
ESPN
Sports Center. Yes.
Yep. He said today. He's got a show, Brother from Another, on Peacock on NBC with him and Michael Holley. And he said on that show today, I'm more excited to cast my vote against Donald Trump tomorrow than I was to cast my vote for Barack Obama in 2008.
See, that's my question.
Your strong sense of what the fuck from that, I think, regardless of how crazy that may sound, because it's been hard for me to kind of, even as someone who didn't even vote for Obama in those elections, that seems so crazy for me. Maybe it's because of what it meant at that point in time, but I think a lot of people feel that way. I think now it's whatever he just said, like the earnest to be a part of removing this president from office. I think there's a strong push from that goes deeper than racial lines, because he was impeached, and aside from that, the coronavirus he tried to throw on Mike Pence's lap, and we all knew as soon as it hit Mike Pence's desk that it was not going to be taken care of in any smart way. I was in New Jersey when the pandemic was at its height, and it was at its height in New Jersey specifically because doctors were telling nurses not to wear masks, and because they didn't want to scare patients off. And during that time period, it was just getting spread like fucking wildfire.
You're talking about like March.
Early, yes, March. And I think that type of rhetoric is what Trump just got off of recently. And I think, I rather, if you could say if it was a part of it or not, because obviously being around the country during this time period, I can tell you it's very different in different states, whatever area code you're in. The Jersey was, we had to wear face mask, or we had to wear coverings to go into the grocery store in March. You know what I mean? Like that level of angst towards it was a direct result of how it was hitting us at that point in time. Shit, the first death in America was in New York City in March. So like it was very close to us at that point in time. But Kentucky is completely different. Utah is completely different. So to try to universalize, that's where I do see the conservative side of it. Like to try to universalize COVID protocol seems crazy because not everyone lives in, like the people in Montana.
So I do want to talk about the
Please,
COVID
because I think
things.
that would be a big. A lot of
It
people
would.
may be voting based on this COVID thing.
But I would like to. I'll ask my question again, so it's fresh on Lance's mind. Like, do you think? Do you think getting Trump? How should I ask the question? Are the votes against Trump? Is that enough? People going? Is that enough to get people to the polls to get rid of Trump as opposed to putting Biden in? Because I don't see it. Like when people talk about Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I don't see the passion for Biden. I just see the hate for Donald Trump. Like, is that enough to galvanize people to go to the polls and enough to swing the election in his favor?
Definitely. And that will be the Achilles heel of the Trump administration, the thing that they didn't count for, that hate is a greater motivator than love. You know what I mean? Like, we don't fight wars because we love something. We fight wars out of hate, right? Like, you don't, I know that was an interesting analogy.
No, to tell you, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. Hate is its own strong feelings that drive a lot of people, and if not hate, fear. And I think Trump has implemented some fear into people's lives, so much so that they are trying to vote against. They're like trying to change whatever, because that's my whole thing about when Obama was in office too. We like to blame all of our things. It's like the head coach taking all the blame after a loss, right? We like to blame all of our issues on the top boss, right? We like to blame all of our, or we like to and give all the praise to the top boss, when in actuality it may not all be their fault, right? But all the blame lays directly on his lap.
Thing about coronavirus. So when you talk about the president's response to the coronavirus, there's really two things that you're talking about, and I think people miss each other. Like, so you have the administration's response. Like, what is the administration doing to combat the coronavirus and get the country back on track? And then you're talking about Donald Trump's handling of it, like what he says personally, what he does personally. Like, there's
As a leader.
Yeah, so those are two different things. I think that's a distinction to make. If you're talking about how the administration has handled the coronavirus, I mean, I don't really see a difference. Like, Joe Biden hasn't come out and clearly stated what he would have done differently or what he will do differently from an administrative standpoint. Now, personally, we know, but from an administrative standpoint, I don't think he's made a case to how he would do things differently, other than pushing for mask mandates and that sort of thing, which he has no power to enforce, because that's left up to the states and the governors. So,
well, I mean, just to push that, I don't think that there has been a strong push of like what we'll do instead, like, because we're talking about the numbers game. Their game has been give Trump the rope and let him do his thing, because all they had to do is lay out.
do you think it's a fair criticism to put the number of deaths on the president's head? Do you think that's fair to say, well, 220,000 people have died, and Donald Trump is responsible for that? I don't think you can say that he's solely responsible for all the deaths that's taking place. And how can he be responsible for a virus that we haven't seen? Like, this is something that's never happened before.
Commander in chief. It's not. That is a president's responsibility to take that pressure. It's not even a decision that he makes. Like Obama, if you're a president and you are doing something, like if something happens while you're president, your response to it and how you react to it, I mean, that is going to be put on your shoulders, because that's all people are going to do is,
I
like,
agree with you. And that's why I said you have to make a distinction between how the administration handled the pandemic versus what Trump did personally.
Well, let me jump in and say that I put it on his head basically because one of the first things he did when he got into office was get rid of the pandemic section of the government that was handling those things that Obama and Biden put into office. And his argument was, I don't want to have hundreds of people on payroll that aren't doing anything, when what they were doing was, I mean, they already did it. They named COVID-19. It was 19 because it was announced and identified in 2019. So I do put that on President Trump because there was a whole department ready for this thing, and he got rid of them because he said they're just they're just on the job, not doing anything. He said we'll hire him back. We'll hire him back when we need him.
I saw COVID splash on WorldStar in 2019, end of the year. It was a video. They said bodies is dropping in China, and it was a one video, and it was people in hazmat suits. It was chaos, and it was like, oh, that's when I first got whiff of it. If I'm watching a video on YouTube, or excuse me, on WorldStar, you can guarantee that Trump already got a memo and huge briefing about the dangers that could possibly happen. And his response, instead of ramping up PPE, right, instead of making things more mandatory or, stop, he keeps talking about how he stopped people from coming to China, but he did not stop people who had relatives in China or, Americans who had been living there and then came back. He didn't stop none of those people.
So, but here's my question on so the travel ban was put in place was January 31st. What?
It's too late. I saw the WorldStar video in October.
And all the COVID that hit America came from Europe, anyways. So I know you're
saying that the travel ban was too late in January 31st.
I'm saying his reaction in general was just too late. If I'm seeing it on WorldStar, he knew about it 2 months before I knew about it. That's what I assume the nature of these things happen.
So how much weight, that's what I'm trying to understand. If you want to blame, if you're looking for somebody to blame, how much weight do you put on the World Health Organization or China where it originated? How much blame do you give them?
The World Health Organization,
because they didn't declare it a pandemic, a worldwide, a global pandemic, until months after it had already spread from China into Asia, into other countries.
We know that Trump has defunded or not defunded, excuse me, has reduced the activity that we actually had in WHO, right? In the World Health Organization.
Because he
pulled out. Okay, so we pulled out of it, right?
After the fact.
He was going to pull out of it anyway. He had campaigned on that. His first 2 years, that's all he was talking about. That's
false.
Okay, well,
not as false as calling it the WHO.
It's the World Health Organization.
Yeah, the WHO was never still referred to as the WHO. I was when you talking about what's wrong, I was who?
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
So this is what I'm saying. Definitely, I agree that he deserves some criticism of how he handled this thing. That may be an understatement, but I'm trying to gauge it, because it can't be all or nothing. This whole thing can't totally be the president's fault. There's
no, and neither is a playoff loss all the head coach's fault, but that's the person that gets the blame. It's their record. At the end of the day, it's not the players' individual records. It's all him. This is the bed he made. Obviously it's okay, who knew it could have been him, and whoever. That's the thing. Whatever president was in office when this pandemic hit was going to have an asterisk on their presidency, and everybody's going to be looking at their presidency. But Trump got the shit, right? And then you talk about that to be the global, how much it affects everyone. But no, the people who catch COVID are the people out here moving like they're going to catch COVID because they are not they're not taking correct protocol. All the people that take correct protocol aren't getting the shit, and that's why it's that simple. And but Trump's obviously pushing on the fact that he had a bunch of super drugs and all this special president shit that no one else in America would ever get to get through it. But at the end of the day, he's like, oh yeah, you can get through it, you can power through it. But guess what? It only kills X amount of people anyways. Like, and when you're asking, like, do I have to put all those deaths on President Trump? Absolutely not. But I guarantee I'm putting all the deaths that happened after people that went to his rallies without masks on.
If it's in the country,
If
it's in the country, it is the president's responsibility, straight up and down. Like, if you are the head of your household, then we can't put blame on anywhere else, because we're not talking about the deaths outside of America. We're not talking about the people infected outside of America. We are talking about only the deaths that are happening in America and the people who are infected in America, and what our head of household did to prevent or exacerbate that. And in that case, all the blame falls on his head. There's no other blame to be divvied anywhere else.
I disagree. I don't think it's that cut and dry. I don't think he can bear all the responsibility for something that was not totally within his control.
He decided to downplay it. I think it was in his control to downplay it.
Yeah, and that speaks to what I said. There's a distinction between the way the administration is handling it and the way that Trump talks about it personally and his own conduct and his own action. I think those are two different things, and some people lump them together as one, but they're not. I think they're distinct. I think you have to take them on their own. Those are, to me, they're separate.
Well, like, that's the thing. Like, if that's not going to impact how you vote in this election, that would make sense why you voted for Trump. But let's talk about problems with the American politics and why we're so divisive at this point in time, and whose fault that is. I think it's a product of the times. I think social media in itself is binary. One of the reasons why I've been able to make a living in doing social media content is it's like, okay, create a question that only has one or two answers. And with that, it's very easy to fall on either side of the fence. And when it's so binary, it's easy to get emotional about your answer and also the answer of the opposite person. So I think social media has been a huge part of politics getting the way it is now and as divisive as it is now. But that's because our president was on Twitter not to say jokes about whatever's going on or whatever cool stuff that Obama did. And it sounds like I'm being biased, but there's just a whole different feel to what the White House Twitter and the president was tweeting at that point in time. Now, when Trump's on there and he's making jokes like everybody else is, but he's not the guy that should be making the jokes, it's a little bit different. So it's social media's fault, but I think Trump definitely empowered social media more than it's ever been empowered up until this point.
Well, I think if you're talking about problems with politics, I think just in general, I mean, as a society, I think we're severely, we lack basic knowledge about our government, the way it's structured, the way it works. I mean, we're just severely ill-informed, and I think social media drives that, and it promotes it, it pushes it further, like you said, more than it's ever been. So I think if we took the time to really get down and understand the issue, I think we agree on more than what meets the eye.
I agree with that.
But the problem is we don't read, we don't actually study. Like for example, the Supreme Court, like this whole nominating Amy Coney Barrett, how it was so controversial. I think if you actually studied and read the Constitution and read Federalist 78, where Alexander Hamilton explained what the court, how it was designed, what it was intended to do, I don't think it would have been that controversial if people understood it in depth.
I think for her it was a merit thing of like being how long you were a judge, the cases you've called, and things like that. Like compared to, but obviously it's historic in a way because she's the third woman justice ever appointed, fifth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it's historic in any right, but I do think that that was one of the things that's called the question, I think, and especially because Trump is so divisive, any nomination from him is going to get picked apart and criticized.
I mean, don't be naive though. Why are we being naive to the fact that the problem people had with it and the reason why it was controversial is because there is motivations behind this. This is supposed to be a nonpartisan thing. This is supposed to be, they are supposed to be the Switzerland of the justice system. Yet we find more and more people being put on the Supreme, this supposedly unbiased group of judges. We see more and more people going into law with different interpretations of the law, and we're writing that off as like, oh, it's just, that's just their interpretation, you know, or we're writing it off as like it's nonpartisan, when in fact there are very much so political like ideologies that feed that lens in which they interpret the law. And we cannot be naive to say that we didn't, like, that's not a controversy. If you said something in the past, that should definitely keep you from getting things in the future, if that's what you think. Now, if you can prove that you've changed your mind, cool, I'm here for it. But that has to be proven, and she can't prove nothing because she wasn't on no thing. She ain't took no cases. And then I'm also gonna speak to what you said about the I'm super loud right now. I apologize. Touch the gain ever, whatever. But see, that's another thing that I'm saying about, like, y'all talking about what's the problem with politics and everything else. The root of all evil is the love.
What's the problem with American politics? Addressing that, and whose fault is it?
A problem with American politics is money. Whose fault is that? The Britons who wanted to escape religious freedom, but in reality, they just wanted to, like, benefit from the economic advantage of being in this, like, this wilderness, this forefront. Like, everything, all the property, all the lanes to get money in Britain had ended. So then this land was founded based on economic escape. You understand? It's like the money, the nations follow the money.
So let me back up a little bit. I think you're kind of missing the point of the question. It's sort of, what is the problem with American politics in a contemporary sense? We're not talking about in the grand scheme of world history. We're just talking about current, like now. Like, what do you see? What is the issues, and how do we get here to this point that we're in at this moment? I'm not talking about American history as a whole. I mean, like what Brandon was talking about with social media. Like, why are we so divided? Why is this election so important as opposed to the one in 2016 and one in 2012? Like, what makes this one different?
Again, I'll take it back to money. We've seen the wealth gap raise higher and higher, the 99% versus the 1%, and 8 people having more money than 99% of the of the American population. Like, when we see this imbalance of economics and an imbalance of power, then you see social unrest, and that is literally, you can pick which country you want to talk about their downfall, but that is where they met their end. Like the French Revolution, Haitian Revolution, like there is hierarchies and classism. When classism meets racism, in my mind, but we can talk about just any ism, but when classism reaches another ism and they clash, you see the nation that you know, the frame that is happening inside that nation. We see that nation start to fall. We see that nation start to weaken, and we have never seen the wealth gap so wide. It's the American dream. Like, that's the thing. Like that promise.
Sounds like that came straight out of the Communist Manifesto.
Why are y'all so scared of? Never mind. And you notice how you
That's
said
a
communism, right? I didn't say communism. You heard something in my speech that like triggered the capitalist in you and said, "Oh, that's communism."
I mean, I've studied up on communism. There's a lot of things that I agree with, to be honest with you.
If we're a moral people, if we have true morality,
and that's scary, and I think that's why, and that's what people see with this election, and that's why it matters so much. I think that's why we're having record turnout when you have young people saying that I've studied up on communism and there's some things that I agree with. Like to some people, that's like mind blowing and shocking.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't like interracial relationships too. That shit's scary, and one of the reasons why they made weed so illegal is they was trying to protect white women from having relations with minorities. Like a lot of this policy is based off of irrational fear that I don't agree with.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I mean, and that's your take on it, but that you just kind of illustrated why this election is so important, because people, they look at that, like they look at these two candidates and they see the direction that we're going, or the direction that we could be going, and I think a lot of people are frightened and worried about that. Not necessarily who these guys are, but what's sort of what we built them up to be in our minds, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think even they would argue that they are less of who they are and more of who they represent to two different sides of America that are just. It's. I mean, like I said, it's binary. So with that, obviously, on either side, how are we gonna close this thing? Because we all, well, Justin's got to go to work in the morning. Ironically enough, the one who's voting conservative is the one who has a job he's got to be at tomorrow morning.
And I think the conversation started to get good and started to get productive. I hate that we hit our stride like at 2 a.m. I think we should have did this like an hour and a half ago.
That was fair.
If only you didn't have to go make money for somebody else.
See,
This
there you
is
go.
what the fuck is going? How do we get here?
I don't know. Like I think Lance
Because you brought up communism, and y'all asked me what the problem with American politics was, and I said money.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a piece of it. But when you start bringing in class and racism and all this other stuff, that sounds very familiar, and it sounds like Marx to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, it's not Marx, right? And even if there are ideas that sound similar, doesn't necessarily mean that they are similar. So to lump me in that
No, I'm not
group
trying to,
with,
and I don't want to do that. Like I said, we can have that discussion at another time. No, I don't want to mischaracterize what you're saying. I'm just saying that that's what it sounds.
Okay, how about this then? I'll try to put a button on this whole thing by asking this question. We've all experienced life and realized how we can disagree with certain things and still love and respect and trust each other, right?
Yeah.
This presidential election has been more divisive than ones we've seen in the past, and there's strong emotions that come from outward support of any candidate, because what that means is you're against the other one, and that feels personal to a lot of people. So how, as Americans, are we going to be able to let politics be politics and not use that as a guiding light to how we love and respect each other and talk to each other on a daily basis? Like, is politics going to be the be all end all that it is for a lot of people, but it wasn't for the majority of Americans? And now it feels like it's more important than not to know where everyone in America is in like this different side of the fence, so we know how to yell at each other more appropriately. Like, is this divisive enough to actually be like? Is there any coming back from the decision that happens today?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've been through it time and time again. I think we've always disagreed from the very beginning. And I think that's what makes us unique, is that we can be so divided, so to speak. But then once the election's over, I mean, we're still civil. We're not at war with each other. We're not coming to blows over this. I mean, I think, I mean, your opinion is your opinion. I don't think that defines who you are as a person. Like that's not, that's not all of who you are. Like your political opinion, that's just a piece of you. That doesn't define you, as a human being.
I would agree. I think that's where we always have been, but I do feel like in this 2020 time and COVID, whatever the hell we want to say to sum up what 2020 is, RP Kobe, like I feel like it's changed a little bit. I feel like it is. I feel like maybe maybe the change is it feels like it's more of a percentage of who you are based on the decision. And I agree with you that it's not, but perception is reality. What do you think, Lance?
We're not. I mean, it's not a. Again, politics is motivated from morality, and based on the politics you choose, you can assume the morality of a person. If you're going to vote for Donald Trump, I can assume morally you think it's fine to take kids away from their parents, right? Morally, you would think that it's fine for poor people to go starving because they just ain't pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. Like, again, it is the generalizations that we make to be civil or to not be civil, and politics bleeds into that y'all saying let politics be politics. There's no such thing, and after this election there will be no such thing. Where did you vote? Who did you vote for in 2020? Got you. Justin, you have aspirations of running for local office.
Wait a minute. Let's back up. Like I don't think you can accurately gauge someone's moral compass based on the political opinions they hold. I don't think it's a fair.
You saying like it was some decent Nazis? Like even though they voted for Hitler, they were nice.
Think that you can have an opinion on policy and have that be separate from your. I mean, like what are you saying? Like, so if you don't support, I don't know, give me
free healthcare.
Yeah, so if I don't want universal free healthcare, does that mean I don't care about your health and well-being? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
I agree.
How is that crazy?
Because you're talking about. So you're saying that because I don't want you to have free healthcare at the taxpayer's expense, then I don't care about your health and well-being. Like I don't care about you individual as a person.
Yes,
like, I don't want you to be healthy.
Yes, you're saying that I do not have the right to health care if I cannot afford it.
I'm not saying you don't have the right to health care.
Then what are you saying? If I can't afford health care, shouldn't I be able to get free health care?
But you're suggesting that someone's moral compass is off if they don't agree that you should have free health care.
If you don't agree that I have the right to go to see a doctor, even if I am a broke, penniless person on the streets of America, if you say that I cannot go see a doctor, that like I don't have the right to health care, that is a moral like transgression. It just is. It's not even a.
I think you have to realize that it is for you, and it's not like I think the issue that you're running into is universalizing your feelings for the entire party, and then also everyone who is voting the way you voted. Like I don't think everyone that voted for Biden and Harris feels how you feel about Justin because he voted for Trump.
I'm saying that humanity is the commonality that we all have, right? It don't matter political side. It doesn't matter creed, color.
But you're not the judge and jury of humanity.
We can go with the judge and jury of the Constitution who said that they were going to craft humanity into a document and people have the right to liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness.
I'm not saying that document is either. But I'm saying that you
Then what
definitely aren't
authority?
the.
Stop. Then you going down a bad rabbit hole. Like, who is the authority? As the individual, we are the authority when it comes to judging the morality, our own morality, and the morality of others. Like, that is just the individual's responsibility. And as a
It's not our responsibility to judge the morality of others.
it's our responsibility to understand, know, and like it's our responsibility to be educated on the things, feelings, morality of other people that live in our society. If we are in a society and the person who is in charge of my boss, if we're in a society and my boss thinks one way, like, and his moral compass seems to do damage on me and mine, then I reserve the right to, like, not only judge him for his morality, for his lack of morality, but also, like, do things and have steps to change to get him fired, to get better working conditions. Like, I have the responsibility. If you do not get life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then, as our Constitution states, you have the right and responsibility to gain that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
What does
Right or
that have to do
wrong?
with your boss?
Bosses are often in the way of that life, liberty, and
Well,
pursuit of
look, like
happiness.
I think my problem is you're conflating like political opinions with morality. Like those are two very distinct things. Like you know you can
They're
be
not, though. That's what I'm
they
trying to
are.
tell y'all. Like,
They
y'all
are.
y'all have to see how they bleed into each other. Remember, we had the politics conversation. Politics are motivated.
Bleeding into each other is not blending.
Bleeding into each other is not blending. I'm not asking them to blend, bleed. I'm telling you that politics, the
I'm
creation
saying
of
Justin
politics,
said that those two separate things, which I agree with, and you said they bleed into each other, which I would agree with as well. That doesn't mean they intertwine. That doesn't mean
they're
that they
touching.
become one.
I'm not saying that they become one. I'm saying that one is affected by the other. So depending on how much red bleeds into your white carpet, you'll have a stain that is small or a stain that is big. Like, I'm not talking about them blending and getting together. I'm saying that policies or politics are created by motivations of morality.
I don't think so. I think those are, like I said again, those are two very distinct things. I think you can be morally, like me and you can be equally morally sound and have opposing political opinions, but you're
And we're not. But we're not morally sound and on the same page because of the policies that we don't agree on. Do you understand what I'm saying? But
I
look,
understand what you're saying. I just think it's wrong.
that's fine, and we're going to do that. I don't know why he tried to end with a question. That's not how you end something. So this is how we'll end.
Let's keep going.
You want to keep going, Mister? I gotta get up
Yeah,
at 7
yeah, let's
o'clock.
keep going. 'Cause I think we're starting to like
It's turning into a debate. It's
But-
turning into a
No, no,
like
you
he's.
think it's a
I agree. It's a debate when somebody's the moderator or anybody else and is like, well, I agree here and I
No,
disagree
I think
here.
I'm
Is
just
like
trying to understand where
it's
what
it's
you were
it's a
coming
debate.
from.
It's a debate.
Okay.
We don't need it to be a debate.
I don't think it's a debate at all. I think it was a good conversation on either side. I feel like when both of you felt like that you were on the fence or something, it turns into like, I don't like how this is going. We're like, I think it's just been a good conversation the entire time. You guys have different opinions. I've agreed with both of you at different point in times because I think both of you guys bring up good points. But the fact is like there is a separation between morality and political voting, and just because you feel that that's not the case, that doesn't mean like the opposite is invalid. And I think you're arguing for an invalidation of points or opinions. And when it was comes to Justin, it was you were having a difficulty defending Trump as a president, which rightfully so because he's been a bad one. So like I think like we all have our opinions on where things should go or not. But like
Has he been a bad one? He voted for him. Has he been a bad one? Does he think that he's been a bad one? He doesn't. He thinks he's been a good one.
He was impeached. Like,
You keep saying
We didn't
impeached.
go
He went through an
deep into
impeachment
that.
process. He was not formally impeached. The Senate drew that back. He was not impeached.
No, he was definitely impeached, but he was acquitted.
He was acquitted.
Yes, by the Senate, he was acquitted. That's the process.
You don't even know that he was impeached.
I do know that he was impeached.
You just said he wasn't.
No, because he went through the when you say impeached, I'm thinking out of office removal. That's what I was thinking. Right, I know that.
But I think is Trump a good president? Is he a bad president? I mean, that depends on who you ask, right? And that's kind of why we're having this
It
conversation.
doesn't.
It does. It does. It depends on.
And you're right, and that is why we're having this conversation. That's why we've had this conversation.
It depends on your worldview, the way you see things, and what you would like to see going forward. I mean, I think that's gonna determine if someone thinks he's been good or bad.
I'm not talking about the eyes of the individual. I'm talking about the eyes of history. In the eyes of history, we can judge our presidents. In the eyes of history, you can say when a president was bad or when a president was good. And in the eyes of history, we will look back at this time and say we had the worst president ever.
I like how you're speaking from like this authoritative position on through the eyes of history. Like how do you come to
I think
that?
the whole concept
That's
of
weird.
authority is, and there needing to be one, is something that you definitely subscribe to, and I definitely do not.
Like how do you come to think that, like you're saying through the eyes of history? Like, what does that even mean?
What does that mean? Are y'all serious right now? Like, are y'all serious? Y'all don't understand the concept of us being able to read a history book or look back at history of any period of time of humanity since it has been written down and be able to pinpoint places where it was good for humanity or bad for humanity. Y'all saying that I can't do that? Y'all saying that there's no authority on history, that there's no scale that measures history and the span of it, and saying, oh, in this time in history we were good, in this time in history things were bad. Like, are y'all serious right now? You can't look back at the French Revolution and be like, if you think the French is looking back at the revolution, is like, depending on who you ask,
Yes.
it was a
Yes.
revolution.
Yes, you could find
That's a
scholars.
really good example to bring up too, actually. Yes.
You can find scholars on both sides that would argue either why it was a good thing or why it was a bad thing on any issue. Like, so there is
Revolution is good. A state collapsing or a country collapsing is a good thing in anybody's eyes.
Listen, my point is there's no consensus on any historical event or person. You're gonna have opposing views and opinions, no matter who you talk about or what time frame you talk about. So when you're talking about Donald Trump in that context, yes, it matters who you ask, and exactly what you're talking about. Are you talking about how he handled the economy? Are you talking about how he handled the coronavirus? Are you talking about his foreign policy?
You're literally sitting across from someone who voted for him and is telling you that he's not a bad president. He's not saying he's not, but he's saying, like, it depends on who you ask. And I think that's an example of why you would, I don't know if you know how history works. It's definitely not one unanimous decision of like, bad this person, FDR, bad, Teddy Roosevelt, bad, Abraham Lincoln, good. Like, that's not how history works.
Are y'all like, what? So we have people who think Hitler did a good job. They're called Nazi sympathizers. Are they looked upon favorably, or is that narrative even teased at the mainstream? Is that narrative even teased at the main? No, it's not. In general consensus, in a unanimous consensus, we can all agree that Hitler was bad. Now, you can say, well, it depends on who you ask. It depends on if you're asking a neo-Nazi or if you're not. That's all it comes down to. What rational people are supporting and saying that Hitler was a good president, like was a good leader? Who are y'all bringing up that's saying, like, this is a educated person?
That's a broad. I mean, you're framing it in a broad.
I'm not. I'm framing it in the way that y'all framed it. Y'all said that I could not say that Trump. We're gonna look back and be like, Trump was a bad person. It's gonna be who you ask. But we can look back and say Hitler was a bad person. right or wrong.
I think you may be choosing one of the only unanimous, and I don't think that even unanimous, because if you've been to Germany, I'm sure you would find people that are
Wrong. Germany, neo-Nazism is like outcast. You can get like
Lance,
legally
you can't
arrested
Lance,
for
I know
that.
you want these things to be true in fact, but like they're just not. They're not. Like you don't know that. Like you don't know.
I do know. I will look it up. It is.
That's what I'm trying to say, Lance. There's nothing you can look up. You can't look up this answer. You don't like. You can't decide how everyone feels about Hitler, and you can't also compare Trump to Hitler. Like it's very like you've done that multiple times, like as an example, and I've let the example rock because we're thinking of like how to compare, but you keep.
Why can't I?
I'm not saying you. I'm saying it's not a fair comparison.
Because he hasn't committed genocide yet.
I'm only pushing it back against you making a comparison because I feel like you've made some really good points during this entire conversation, and I don't want those to get nullified by you like dying on the hill of whatever hill you seem to be dying on right now.
The hill that you are trying to kill me on is that the history has no unanimous viewpoint, and I'm telling you that as a shared humanity, we learn from our history, right? We learn the leaders that did bad, we learn from the bad leaders, and that, like, to say that there wasn't any bad, or it depends on who you ask, that is not human history. Human history, what they say, the history is written by the victors. If the victors were never like if they had bad generals, if they had bad leaders, then we would never know about the history. Or no, I wanted to close, just for the record, I wanted to close with everybody just kind of going around the table and saying, giving their like last ditch effort, like, hey, go out and vote. This is why I think you should vote for this person and make your decision. So I feel like that is a better way to close up an election podcast. Even though he's Mr. I'm good at 7:00, my kids wake up at 6, and I think I might have stuff to do tomorrow. I might be able to sleep. I might not be able to sleep. But we don't need to be in here all night.
I'm not campaigning for anyone. I think everybody should vote according to what they believe and based on their knowledge and their understanding of the issues and what's important to them. I think that's what we should be doing. I'm not going to tell anybody how to vote based on what I think or what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if it's my turn, do what's on your heart. Do what's on your heart. If it's on your heart to be a part of this process, then be a part of this process because you have a right to be. If it's on your heart to go to the Caribbean for the next 2 months and let the social unrest pan out, then go to the Caribbean. Like do whatever it is that has gotten you to this point, and get as involved as you think you should get involved. Because I mean, obviously, this is something that is big enough for a lot of first-time voters, me being one of them. So
I'll third what they said. Do what's in your heart. Vote for who you want. Be prepared, though, for the vote that you make. So if you don't vote, be prepared for what may happen if you don't vote. Like who could be in office and what does 4 more years of Trump look like. If you don't vote, and you need to think about what does 4 years of Biden look like. If you do vote, again, being prepared for the decision of your vote. I voted for Biden. I am prepared as much as I can be for the reaction to if Biden loses or if Biden wins. I have kind of already prepared that for myself. So I ask that all y'all kind of prepare for yourself. For this will not be the last election, and we will continue to go on after this. But it's up to us to manifest and imagine how we will go on.
Prodigal Sons, episode 1.